Welcome to FinanceFeeds Podcasts. FinanceFeeds is the world's premier interactive Forex industry news source, providing the latest insights and current affairs from within the online trading industry worldwide. Enjoy our latest podcast episode. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of FinanceFeeds Podcast. My name is Nikolai Isaev. I'm Editor-in-Chief of FinanceFeeds. Joining me today on the show is Agne Linge, who is Head of Growth at WeFi Deobank. Agne, thanks for joining me today.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you, Nikolai.
I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about your personal and professional background in the blockchain, DeFi, crypto space. If you can kind of give us a brief rundown of your history.
Of course, with pleasure. And actually, it seems that it all started such a long time ago, but still people say it's early in crypto and in digital asset space. And we still see in the industry that indeed it's still starting. There are regulations and adoption still to happen. But my journey in crypto, actually, I would say it started when I started to choose my career. So I wanted always to study finance, and at that time to become investment banker. I was fascinated by numbers, by stock markets, by the way financial markets work. So I did that early on in my career. But I started in crypto in 2017. And why I connect these dots, finance and crypto, because I believe that crypto and blockchain and all of this, what we have in Web3, it's an evolution of financial ecosystem. It's an evolution of financial markets. And one way or another way, we will all have payments, remittances on some sort of a blockchain. We'll have a tokenized bonds, stocks, and all financial instruments. So it's all going there. And I started in 2017 with my studies of master's degree at University of Nicosia, which was a great start. We studied about money history, analyzed the concepts of what is money, what is not money. At that time, it was only Bitcoin. Ethereum was only starting. And right now we have hundreds and hundreds of blockchains, as you know. Some highlights from my professional career. I worked at Binance, which has helped a lot with the adoption and with the popularity of crypto and trading. Then also worked for a DeFi project called dGate. We built an order book DEX with the zero knowledge technology. And right now I'm working on something that is actually adoptable and useful for everyday life. So it's a Deobank, as you said. It's a new concept. So you can imagine it as a neobank, a bank that is on digital rails with applications of blockchain and artificial technology. In the future, just to add, I'm expecting and I see myself to continue to contribute in this industry. I'm observing with eagerness what is happening in the United States, the new Trump policies, and also eagerly observing what is happening in the European Union. As we know, the MiCA regulations just came into force, so a lot of projects are rushing into getting their licenses in Europe. So I'm pretty connected to the industry, and I speak regularly at the conferences and share insights with other thought leaders in the industry. So it is an exciting place to be. So I would recommend anybody who is interested in finance and in the technology and how we conduct our everyday transactions to join this industry for sure.
Mm-hmm. Great. Yeah, I think anybody who's not taking a deep dive into the DeFi, decentralized markets and everything that has to do with blockchain is missing out. I think you're right. It's the future.
Cool.
For all of us. Well, thanks for giving us some insights on your background. And I see that you're traveling around the world doing a lot of speaking engagements. So I'm glad that we at FinanceFeeds got a chance to speak to you today. Let's jump right into some of these interesting or maybe difficult questions. There's been ongoing discussion about de-dollarization. I think this started a few years ago with the geopolitical tensions around the world. And some people have argued that a shift towards a multipolar world will reduce reliance on the US dollar, especially including things like energy markets. And countries like those in the BRICS alliance have explored using their own currencies, as we know. However, Agne, you suggested we're actually seeing a trend towards greater dollarization. Can you explain your perspective in this matter?
Of course, sure. Also, I think it's worth to revisit this perspective due to re-election of Trump. As we can see already, a lot of policies and geopolitical dynamics are changing. So when it was a Biden administration, We had a clear narrative that the BRICS countries and Russia and China, they are very much against the United States, etc. So everybody's sort of conglomerating together to go against that establishment. However, we see that Trump is trying to do some different policies, some negotiations, perhaps launching some trade wars, as people say, but we'll see what happens after that. So it's worth to revisit and stop a little bit to see what happens with these BRICS countries. But to answer your question, what I had in mind, so the use of US-backed stablecoins such as USDT, USDC, and many, many other stablecoins who use US treasuries as a backing, it actually creates a demand for US dollar, like a synthetic demand for United States dollar. And it actually increases demand for the actual US dollar. This is what I had in mind when making the statement. So to elaborate, traditional money issuance would be controlled by central banks, which regulate the supply of currency through, let's say, interest rates or open market operations. But stable coins such as USDT increase the demand for US dollar and treasuries because the issuers must hold the reserves back in those US dollars and treasuries.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you mentioned Donald Trump, his kind of views on crypto, right? I think we've all seen the statements or heard the statements with respect to how he feels about digital assets in the near future. And I think it's still a wait and see game. I don't know if you agree. We don't necessarily have any clear policies laid out yet, but it seems like it's a very positive development for just the global DeFi industry itself, right? And kind of, I would say, alleviating some concerns that the US was lagging behind in developing a concrete, uniform strategy on how digital assets are going to be regulated, institutionalized, so to say, and how they're going to continue to operate in the United States.
I totally agree with you that it's definitely positive. More positive than negative. We don't know what's going to happen, in which way this will take shape or form. Of course, if this is happening to be more in an institutional way, more Wall Street people, more serious players are entering the market, it has to be regulated market in terms and conditions that is acceptable for them. And we both know that DeFi was a bit of a playground for developers. You do things that is unclear whether it's regulated, whether you can do this in any jurisdiction or not. So all of this innovation that has been created by crypto Web3 ecosystem by developers is great. We have created very interesting protocols, very interesting DeFi use cases and zero knowledge and all of that. But right now, when we are stepping up to another level, my concern would be how we will move from this in the bedroom or garage type of development to a more serious institutional players. And of course, yes, but I'm very happy that Trump has created an administration which shows clear signs of being positive. We have Harold Lutnick, we have Treasury Secretary Bessent, who have all made very positive statements with regards to digital assets. And there is a call to do a stablecoin bill. So everybody's waiting in the world for America's first moves, because we want it or not, America is a very big player in the financial markets and in the global economy. So we all want to understand how it will move in order to take future decisions.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, I would say that besides Trump, I think there's been quite a lot of changes at different agencies within the United States, right? If we go back and we remember the SEC, Gary Gensler, right? The different legal actions that were taken against some large crypto exchanges in the United States in the last few years, right? Or, for example, the Ripple legal matters. It seems like these changes at the different government agencies are also having a positive impact in terms of the future.
You know yourself that all the crypto projects, unless it's Coinbase and very pure American-based project, everybody were avoiding United States.
Yes.
And even those innovators, even businessmen who were originally from United States, they would do projects outside United States because it was just impossible. Although they were even prepared to go the hard way to talk to regulators, it was punishable. Everything was on a prosecution basis. That was the stance. So we understand that in a totally novel industry where a lot of things are unclear, we have to move step by step and have a dialogue, etc. This was what people were prepared to do. But unfortunately, it was just, we're all humans. We don't want to go to jail. That was the threat of doing business in crypto in the United States. And right now, what I'm hearing from the industry, that people are going back. They're going back to launch American-based projects that are on crypto, Web3, and artificial intelligence and stablecoins. So it's an exciting time. And we know that a lot of innovation comes from United States. So I'm excited about this.
We previously mentioned BRICS in our discussion. I just very quickly, I wanted to get your impression on the fact that I recall there being discussions about the BRICS alliance working on creating its own digital currency so that the countries within the alliance can transact with each other for the sale of energies and other products. Do you think that it is something that is realistic for the future, for something like a political alliance like BRICS or geopolitical alliance like BRICS to have its own digital currency that could be utilized efficiently by government and or individuals?
I think it's a slightly maybe political question, but I'll try to answer to best of my thoughts and abilities. I definitely think that it's possible and it's being explored, most likely. Why would countries want to lose the monetary sovereignty? We all understand that over-reliance on one currency is not good. And with all due respect to United States, the debt is just astounding. I studied economics at university, and it doesn't make sense, all the money supply and etc. So, but seems to be doing well in any case. So I think it makes a lot of sense. And also, I was analyzing similar model in case of geopolitical tensions back in 2017. So I thought, perhaps, there is a special drawing rights created by International Monetary Fund. Why wouldn't the world use a basket of other currencies to create a digital basket of representation that would be like a special drawing rights? It would make actually a lot of sense, right? So why would, all the countries would rely on US dollar when you can rely on a basket of currencies, and that would be this accounting unit, such similar to special drawing rights. So I'm sure these kind of things are being explored. And in recent year, we have a discussion about CBDCs that is a little bit muted. I'm not sure if you agree, but not a lot of people are talking about CBDCs. There's more discussion about stablecoins, but there is a lot of work on CBDCs being done in the Middle Eastern countries and in all other countries. The central banks, they are exploring that, and they are doing task forces and some even pilot projects. So these kind of elements will merge somehow into one. And let's not forget, we have Bitcoin that is already acting as a gold, right? So
sure.
What is clear, that financial system is evolving. It is also clear that we have a lot of debt. We have a lot of, visible inflation in the United States. We have visible inflation in Europe and in Latin America. So some sort of changes will appear in the way that governments store their value, right? In the way we transact, and in the way the banking works as well for people.
It's great that you mentioned CBDCs. I have not heard about them probably in like 6 months or more. You're right. That discussion has kind of like disappeared.
Exactly. Everybody were talking, let's get ready. It's going to be digital euro, digital dollar. But now the conversation is muted. But if you go onto ECB website or IMF website or Bank of International Settlements, you will find a lot of research papers, even perhaps recent ones, that are being done on this topic. So we should investigate more. What are they doing?
Yeah, definitely. So, Agne, you mentioned that the global adoption of US dollar pegged stablecoins has increased demand for US treasuries, which really benefits the United States, but it also raises concerns about monetary sovereignty for other countries, right? We've seen some governments responding by introducing their own digital currencies. Like, for example, Nigeria recently launched a state-approved stablecoin pegged to its local currency. But at the same time, Nigeria has been cracking down on crypto. I think there was a case with someone from Binance being either temporarily or permanently jailed in Nigeria. I might be wrong. So it's like this dichotomy. And I guess my question to you is, can governments win this fight? And can anyone really win this fight? Or are we at the mercy of the markets and the developments that are going on in the financial system globally?
Right. I've heard also about the case of Nigeria. And maybe to spice up our discussion, I've also heard about Argentina and the Libra, interesting project, let's put it this way. And the conversation with the founder of the Libra project went public. Maybe you listen to that. So I hope that the future trials will be more above the board and would not ruin the credibility of crypto ecosystem than Argentina. But overall, if the goal is to suppress US-backed stable coins entirely, I don't think it's likely. There is a huge global demand for dollars still. Maybe in the future it will change, but it is what it is right now. Especially in emerging markets with inflation or unstable currencies, most people want to have access to stable coins that are denominated in dollars. In people's view, it is still the most stable currency. I'm trying to put myself in the shoes, let's say, of a Nigerian or someone from Argentina, maybe being a bit more conservative. If my currency is inflating and it loses value, would I buy Bitcoin? Probably not, right? Probably I will look access for gold or real estate, or if I have to have currency, dollar is still what it is, right? People trust dollar, and it always held. So it does offer stability, and it does offer interoperability and also liquidity, right? So you want to be able to move it in and out, either if you're a private person or a business. So you ask if this is a fight that anybody can win. I think it's all about the dialogue and negotiations. We are living in a very dynamic world. And, the fights are probably many decades up front. There are strategic views of how the governments want to position themselves. But look at the United States. Trump won, and many things seem to be changing already. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, definitely. So WeFi, where you hold a position of head of growth, is described as a Deobank or Deobank. What does this term mean? This is something new.
Right. So stands for decentralized on-chain neobank. Why we wanted to invent or to create, let's say, a different concept is you heard of neobanks. Neobanks is like a mobile version, right? You can access it digitally from your mobile phones. We all heard of Revolut, N26 in Europe, etc. But we feel that all these neobanks that claiming to be novel and digital, this kind of like a user interface, but based on traditional banking rails. They still have to comply with traditional banking regulations and all of that, what is related. And what at WeFi we want to introduce a new concept that is actually targeting and enabling financial services and banking services for those who are unbanked. We calculate there are over 1.4 billion unbanked individuals worldwide. And those neobanks, they were not able to reach those individuals because they still have to act as they would be at traditional banks, just without the physical presence. Right. So with introducing the concept of Deobank, we really want to offer through non-custodial options for customers a true financial control where they can spend money but still retaining full ownership of their funds. And all of this is protected by a smart contract that is very well known in the blockchain ecosystem. Now, we understand that by doing this, we will not be able to do it immediately. WeFi will move stage by stage. First, we will offer the services that would be traditionally viewed as neo-banking services. And then we will educate our users and educate them what does it mean to have full custody of your funds and how would this non-custodial option work for them. And so also with introducing this concept of Deobank, which is based on blockchain rails, unlike traditional banks, we offer transparency. You can see a lot of things that are on-chain. As we know, blockchain is not something that is secretive. It's actually very transparent infrastructure and rails. And we want to offer our users access to DeFi, so such as staking or liquidity pools, all of these interesting things that could help them to build wealth and were not available to them before that.
Great. Another question related to banking. Agne, previously you have suggested that the banking system operates as a monopoly and that decentralization is the solution. But I guess my question is, aren't there monopolies that are inherently better for society, such as the monopoly of violence, so to say? And Why is decentralization of finance better than centralization?
Actually, it's an interesting question of decentralization. And if we go deeper, where does decentralization end and what is considered to be truly decentralized, etc.? But going to the basic concept and banking, right? Are we happy how people around the world are right now banked, or let's say unbanked, and the access to financial services they have? I think me and you, we consider ourselves privileged individuals. We can live more or less in any country of the world. We have access to financial services. We can rent or purchase, any goods or services. But there are many, many people, billions of people who do not have access to that. They never had access to banking system. They cannot borrow, they cannot start businesses, and also they're even prone to inflation. So even the little money that they earn from the work that they do, this money deteriorates. It's get eaten away by inflation. So the answer is like, does the current system serve everybody, or does it serve those who are profitable to be served? This is where I'm leaning my question. So the current system, in the Western banking, it does serve a wealthy individuals, does serve individuals that belong to the system, but it doesn't serve somebody who is doing farming, let's say, or even content creation in Southeast Asia, in smaller countries, let's say. And actually, even I would dare to say that in Europe, if you are not employed, if you're not part of the system, if you're doing your own business, it's also very difficult to get access to banking. There are lots of restrictions of what you can and cannot do. So this monopoly basically keeps you in the loop of a certain circle of services that you keep buying from one another, and does not give you independence and true financial freedom.
Yeah, I would actually agree with you. I've actually experienced a little bit of that myself, having moved from the United States to Cyprus, which is obviously an EU country. And you're right. I mean, even the classical banking system in Europe has quite a few restrictions in terms of, I don't want to say personal economic freedoms, but yes, there's quite a bit more scrutiny in terms of, okay, well, this is your money, and what are you going to use it for, right? And if you are depositing funds into such bank accounts, where did this money come from? And all of these KYC and AML checks and things like that. And I understand that they may be necessary for the traditional banking system, but at the end of the day, we're becoming more and more digitalized as a global society. And if we look at the younger generations, Gen Z or whichever generation, right, is the youngest one right now that people speak about, everybody's used to having a device and doing everything on their device, for things to be either instantaneous or near instantaneous when it comes to any kind of transactions. And at the same time, I feel like a lot of people who are not very wealthy, they actually look at things like how many fees or commissions they're paying, both in the traditional banking system, but also in the neobank system that you mentioned, the Revoluts and all the other providers that are out there. There's many of them. If you look at individual countries, for example, the United States, I could name at least 3 other neobanks that have, I would arguably say, a good market share now in the United States for financial services and banking products for the general public. And I feel like with respect to fees and commissions and the cost of transactions, neobanks, I feel like kind of have the upper hand as compared to traditional banks in terms of fees as well, with respect to how much you're paying.
True. And if you add stablecoins and blockchain technology, I'm sure you are a user yourself. You know how quickly and how cheap we can do transactions and remittances. And when you think about in traditional banking, to make an international transfer takes up to 7 days. Why? What do they do with this money? So it's completely unacceptable in this digital environment, as you say, that requires speed, etc. And also, what you mentioned, they're asking, what are you using this money for? Where does the money come from? Please provide all the checks and stuff. We do understand it's necessary, but you cannot treat all of the people just because of anti-terrorist law has been passed, So this is our money. and the customers have the right to be treated fairly, I think. And when you have alternative tools that are emerging, and I've read a lot of articles about what happened during the unstable situations, war situations in the Middle East or in Ukraine, in similar countries that were basically scared that they will not be able to get access to the bank. I think in Lebanon, there was some sort of an interesting case where they were having a problem to access. So what do? People learn about crypto, people hoard their money in Bitcoin, and they do transact in stable coins. I've read stories that the stable coins are being used very much by those who are doing remittances to Latin American countries or to Southeast Asian countries. So people that have some more education, they're already avoiding the traditional banking system.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. I'm sure you've heard about this a few years ago when the discussion about CBDCs came about. People like Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, he said things like, "No, crypto is not going to work," and things like that. Then, after some time, it became public that actually JP Morgan developed its own. Not sure if it's a stable coin or a token of some sort, but definitely some sort of blockchain-based asset within JP Morgan itself for conducting transactions. And as far as I know, in terms of public information that's available, that's actually grown quite a bit within JP Morgan. And I guess my question to you is, do you think that that situation is an example of how the traditional banking system may adopt blockchain and or stable coins in their own way, right? So in other words, you could have maybe like a Chase coin, you could have a Bank of America coin, you can have a Citibank coin, and essentially retail banking customers of these banks at some point will be able to use traditional funds, but then also to use these coins, tokens, or stable coins to transact with their bank or to buy goods and services. I guess that's the question, if it makes sense.
It's interesting what will happen for sure. I heard that in Europe, Societe Generale, if I pronounce this correctly, they have launched their stable coin. It's backed by euro, something like that. So clearly that the banks are looking into this direction. I'm curious whether this is in order to streamline the transactions, between the banks or the offering to their customers, or this is also an opportunity to open, let's say, a new business line. We know how much USDT is earning per profits per year. So I think it could be a combination of both. They understand that using stablecoin rails is really streamlining a lot of processes, and it's much cheaper to move money this way, but also it's maybe quite profitable activity for them. So.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see how things go on that front, because I would say that within the blockchain and crypto community, there is a certain opinion out there that the traditional banks at some point eventually will take all of this over. Right. So in other words, they will still be put in place as the overarching custodians, let's say, right, of a lot of these digital initiatives with stable coins, tokens, and all of this stuff. And while I don't have a particular opinion, it remains a fact that I think that remains a risk in a sense going forward, perhaps.
We all know that banking lobby is a very strong lobby. So I'm just thinking, all this MiCA regulation that requires stable coins to hold nearly 60% of the reserves in European banks. We all know that European banks are not in a good shape. Even the Swiss two biggest banks, they had to merge because of some issues. We don't know the banks are not transparent. They've never been transparent, right? So, it would make a lot of sense if the politicians are aiming still to support the banking system, which is crumbling. I'm not sure what is the state in the United States. We had some banks that have fallen in the last few years, but in Europe, what we see that the situation is not amazing, right? So, of course, they will want to keep to their power. The banks were very powerful before. So, I just came from Davos in January, and they were discussing, will traditional banks have to integrate with fintechs, or will they have to kill fintechs, this kind of thing. So the answer was they have to hurry up. They have to open up their mind and really integrate the technology and either absorb the fintechs or completely close their shops and start anew, because there are some things that you cannot change on the old rails. Some things are much easier just to start, especially when now we have blockchain and artificial intelligence. So, but I'm sure that it would be very logical that banks will want to keep the power in their hands.
Well, let's see what happens. Things are moving very quickly, so to say. um, I guess, Agne, to wrap up our conversation, I always try to ask my guests something humorous or interesting at the end that is not too dry and formal. You've traveled around the world to many different countries, and I wanted to ask you, out of all the countries or cities, maybe perhaps that you've traveled to around the world, which one stands out the most to you today in terms of being comfortable overall from a banking and any kind of financial transaction standpoint, where you can use neobanks, deobanks, you can use stable coins, you can use digital assets to transact, let's say at a coffee shop or somewhere else to buy goods or services, but also a place that has left a special impression in your mind with respect to how comfortable it is to stay there, live there, the culture, the people, the weather, and things like that. Are there any places in the world that today are a great combination of all of these factors where someone who is proficient in DeFi is understanding of what kind of opportunities and what kind of services are available there for people that want to transact more and more using digital assets? Where is a comfortable place for people like this to live, either permanently or temporarily, from your perspective?
Interesting question. I was thinking how to answer this best. Actually, the combination of all, I wouldn't put this all in one. According to regulations that there are in Europe, you can actually transact, you can have some cards or some sort of a tools that you can spend in Europe using crypto. So you can convert your crypto and you spend it on spot, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And these kind of solutions are popping up, of course, worldwide, depending on the regulations. Now, I haven't been to El Salvador. I don't know how it is over there to pay for goods and services. People say it's good. It's interesting. The weather is also good. But what in terms of living there, and if you're a professional in crypto ecosystem and building, my choice would be Dubai. And this is where I'm based. This is because of the very positive stance for innovation. And they're moving in a regulatory way. They're moving in a proper way. It's not easy to get licenses and to start businesses, but it is possible. It is encouraged. But you just have to go step by step. There are guidelines, there are regulations of how to do things. And everybody who moved to Dubai, they're very happy of the super positive stance. So they want to innovate rather than to stop. So as I said, in Europe, I'm sure you can already spend your crypto because of the regulations that are already in place. But Europe seems to be very lagging in terms of being a pro-innovative stance. Everybody's criticizing Europe a little bit. And Asia is also interesting. I've been to Singapore. I have never spent a crypto in Singapore, but there's a lot of crypto projects and Web3 projects that are there and interesting people. So my answer would be Dubai, probably. Yes.
Great. Awesome.
How about you? May I ask also the same question?
I to be honest with you, I honestly don't know yet. I've been to countries where you can walk into a Starbucks and pay for your coffee with crypto, right?
Right.
You just have a separate, not card reader, but like a machine where essentially you can use digital assets to pay for things like this. But at the same time, like you said, it seems like this type of crypto adoption is taking place in some countries, some of which may not be that great, all that great right now to be based in, to live in, and things like that, for people who are maybe digital nomads or people who are very well versed in crypto and want to have the opportunity to spend their crypto on traditional, regular everyday goods and services. I'm eager to visit a place like Singapore, because I've heard that Singapore is actually a place where crypto adoption has definitely been at the forefront. I think they're one of the countries that's been really, really leading that initiative. But at the same time, I think the tropical weather in Singapore is not very hospitable to everyone, so to say.
Yes, indeed. So I would say, in Dubai, people say it's great weather, but the summers are quite hot.
Yes.
And where I come from, Lithuania, a lot of people are pro crypto. A lot of projects have been born in Lithuania, and a lot of crypto projects are licensed as well as exchanges. So I would say it's a good crypto ecosystem. However, it's cold. Some people love cold, but not everyone. So
Yeah, definitely.
it's very difficult to get all of these things at once. I guess it's best to travel, have a few places where you want to visit, and this is what happens. This is how you become a nomad.
Yeah, exactly. Agne, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us today and to tell your audience about your professional background and also about WeFi, the Deobank as it's now known, and all of your insights and thoughts about some of these very, I think, important topics related to blockchain, decentralization, stable coins, you name it. I think we covered a lot of different topics and angles today. I wanted to thank you, and I wanted to say that I hope to meet you at some point somewhere, perhaps at an industry conference, and continue to speak with you and to get your insights on a lot of these different important questions as the evolution of blockchain, decentralization, digital assets continues to unfold.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. It was an interesting conversation, and I look forward to see how the market develops. And very, very glad to be part of this ecosystem, and really glad to be part of WeFi team. That we are not afraid to build something innovative, rather to pave the way for the future and to use all the most innovative technologies that are there already. So thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to our latest FinanceFeeds podcast episode. For sponsorship opportunities or to become a guest, please email us at info@financefeeds.com.